There are a higher number of big men expected to be drafted in the first round tonight of the 24 NBA draft than we've had the last couple years. Are the bigs back?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoops show out there. Happy Wednesday, happy NBA Draft Day, round one anyway. Yeah, we're splitting this bad boy up for some reason now. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, joined today by our long-lost brother, Leaf Tulane, back from a nice, lengthy family vacation. And for those of you watching, you see that little shadow of a mustache above his upper lip. We're celebrating that and hoping that Leaf will keep that for all his NBA draft coverage. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch today. Want to remind you that you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, coming up on the show today, going to be a fun one. Leaf and I have just several NBA draft questions we're going to work through, trying to make them fun rather than just like who's really good, who's going one, those kind of things. And so we've tried to craft them in some different ways, like who's the last player left in the green room, who's a non-lottery player that's going to have a 10-year career, things like that. So we're going to get to all those. But where we want to start, Leaf, right out of the gate is as I look at it, I'm seeing about 6 college player centers that could go in the first round tonight. We're talking Donovan Clingan from UConn, Zach Edey from Purdue, Yves Missi from Baylor, Kyle Filipowski from Duke, Kel'el Ware from Indiana, and DaRon Holmes from Dayton. So, Leaf, the first question for you is I want you to rank these 6 players, not in terms of what order you think they'll go in tonight, but in terms of who you think will have the best or most productive NBA career. And the good thing for you here is you get to decide what are the terms of most productive NBA career.
Well, yeah, I think the big man, we talked about this before the college basketball season. Like this was, you looked at who were the projected All-Americans and you were like, well, I got 4 big men. Like what the heck's happening here?
That's right.
And so honestly, some of these guys weren't All-Americans, but the one who's going to be the first pick of these guys and the one I think will have the most productive NBA career is Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan, I think is going to go in the top 5 of the draft. I would guess top 3, honestly. Yeah. I think someone's going to trade up for the Rockets pick if he's not traded down for by the Hawks.
I wondered about that. I wonder, are the Hawks really maybe going to do that?
I wouldn't personally, but I think you got to get some value. And if they're not excited about number 1, you might as well explore it.
Yeah.
But so I think Clingan's probably the most productive. And the rationale is basically his archetype is tailor-made for what the NBA asks you to do right now. Protect the rim, play drop coverage, catch lobs, make a few passes out of short rolls. Like that's all his role is. The guy that I like the next most would probably be Yves Missi. I think that's where I go a little off the tracks from most people. But what I like about him is he's not a finished product, yet he's more skillful than even Donovan Clingan, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's necessarily more skillful than Edey because Edey's very skillful at what he does, which is he's going to bludgeon you, he's going to get to his hooks, and he's got great touch. But he's got moves and coordination that's very rare to have for someone so new to basketball. And yes, there's moments where you're like, wow, how in the world did he do that? That was silly. But there's also how in the world did he reach that ball? He just rebounded a ball from the moon. He blocks it. He runs like a deer. I think he's not as immediately as impactful, but he may have the highest upside of these guys should everything pan out. And I tend to prioritize upside, especially in a class where, quite frankly, they're devoid of stars and elite traits. So I bank on some of these traits and development programs. So he may have to find the right team. He might have to be patient and bide his time. But I really do believe he's got a great chance to be a contributor pretty early in his career and in the long run. And I've seen some comparisons to like Serge Ibaka, and I think that's generous. Wow. But imagine someone with similar physical attributes and a similar growth curve of someone who can end up shooting the ball eventually, but really is just an energy defensive player. And that would be awesome. And so he's the one who I think has that type of upside, which is not a star, but it's a star in the role. And some of these other guys, I don't see it. And then I think I personally am wary of Edey being this lottery pick that some people project. Like, I know my Utah Jazz, there's rumors that they're considering him at 10. I would be frustrated with that pick personally, but I do think he'll be the second or third one off the board. And I think Kel'el Ware may have more upside than Edey.
Interesting.
But I don't necessarily love Kel'el Ware. He doesn't comfort me if I take him because, look, he went to 2 different schools, and both schools, I think, left almost frustrated with Kel'el Ware. Like Oregon, no one was pleased with what the All-American produced. Then he goes to Indiana. He had a fine season, but Indiana was terrible, and it wasn't wholly his fault. But if you're supposed to have this star in the front court who's a lottery talent, which he absolutely is, you should be better.
That's right.
And so that concerns me. And I know maybe you think, well, we can teach him work ethic, but sometimes you can't. And so
you can't. I'm with you.
So I think that's the top 4 for me. And,
would you go Edey or Ware 3? If I held your feet to the fire.
What I think will happen will be Edey. For myself, I actually think that one depends on the team more than the others, honestly. Like, if a team is committed to playing Edey in a role where he's going to be a powerful guy down low, get the ball occasionally, run pick and roll, pick and post up, then Edey. But if the team plays a more modern NBA, kind of space them out, then I take Ware. So I really think that one's pretty close.
Okay.
I'm not high on either DaRon Holmes or Kyle Filipowski. I've never been a fan of Filipowski. I just don't see what he does well at the NBA level. And I very well could be wrong. But, I mean, he was a lottery pick projected the last 2 years. And I didn't even think he was that great at Duke this year. Like, he shoots the ball as part of the pitch if he's going to play the 5. Well, he didn't shoot it well. His form looks fine, but he didn't shoot it well. He's bad defensively as a 5, and he's got a negative wingspan, doesn't jump. And so that's not a rim protector. Now, does he slide well enough to be a 4 in the NBA against the best athletes in the world? I don't see it. Is he skillful? Yes, but I think there are like oversights in terms of what his actual body of work is. And then the last one for me is DaRon Holmes. I feel so badly because he was great. I watched him play in person twice, Dayton versus Nevada and Dayton versus Arizona. And he plays hard, and he's like the ultimate teammate. I saw him giving people hugs that were not even Dayton affiliated, just giving them hugs after the game in the concourse of an arena. I know well. Like, it was not in media place. It was not like a family oriented. He was just giving fans hugs. Great guy. But he doesn't run well. Like, he lumbers. And his shots improved. He changed the shot from the combine when I saw him at the combine from when I saw him in Salt Lake at March Madness. But it's still very slow. So is your power forward going to have a slow shot and run poorly, or are you going to have him be a center? And that center, I don't think he's a center either because he's not like a vertical rim protector. He's a positional one, which is impressive. But there's not very many of those in the NBA. So I know a lot of people
front court tweener.
Well, the craziest thing is I know people who have him in the top 15. And I feel like I'm on an island being negative. So maybe I'm just not seeing something. But personally, if you're going to play the 4 in the NBA and you're not a absolute dead-eye shooter, you have to be this like wiry change of ends guy. Like, think of Jared Vanderbilt as someone who just hustles and runs with those metrics because he's very thin as well. He's not like he's a burly dude. And so I don't know. I just don't see the role. And so maybe it's got to be a perfect team, perfect setup. But in most of the NBA that I watch, I don't see a role in which DaRon Holmes thrives playing the way he played at college.
So let me ask you this, Leaf, and then we'll move on. Do you think with this kind of higher volume of centers probably going first round tonight, are the bigs back in the NBA, or is this just an anomaly that we're seeing?
Well, I think it helps that the draft in terms of guards, just there or wings, even there's no one that's like a superstar. So it pushes like, hey, these guys might be the strongest position. Well, maybe let's nab them this year. And I also think there's something to be said for the pick and roll big and the one who's a drop coverage big. That's a coveted position. But you also saw the Celtics didn't really need a true big. I know they had Porzingis. I know they had Al Horford. But what people want is to be switchable and defensively versatile. And I think that's what's being coveted more than even just a big. It's just that Alex Sarr is a defensively oriented player. Donovan Clingan is a defensive specialist. You look at these type of players, and I think that's what's being prioritized. And in the case of Edey, I think that Edey is such an anomaly that people are intrigued by him.
Yeah. Okay. That all makes a ton of sense, and we'll keep an eye on it to see, like, hey, if the NBA starts valuing bigs again differently, taking it back 2 decades, then maybe we'll see some more guys leaving early, but hopefully not, because I love keeping them in college basketball, Leaf. Now, look, we're going to move on here. One of my favorite draft moments, anytime it happens, are the good surprises. When somebody we don't expect just leaps up and is picked earlier than anyone thought possible. Will we get one of those tonight? And on the other side of that, the sad surprises. Who's the last guy left in the green room just sitting there twiddling his thumbs? We're going to try to answer all those questions coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, going to MLB games is one of the summer's most favorite things for me to get to do. The game, the food, everything that's part of the experience. I'm excited to make all new memories this summer at the ballpark. Thankfully, though, you don't have to sweat high-price last-minute tickets because Game Time is an authorized marketplace of MLB, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. In fact, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. And with all that, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. In fact, I was looking around right now. My Atlanta Braves are playing in St. Louis, which is like 4 hours away from me. And Leaf, I was looking, I could get lower level seats for $9 for tonight's game, section 144, row 13. Somebody should hop on that because I can't do it, right? Because NBA draft. Anyway, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. One of my favorite images from the last several years of the NBA draft was, I want to say it was the 2019 draft, Leaf, when Kobe White was drafted.
Wow.
Early.
And that's what he says.
Yes. And then his teammate, Cam Johnson, who was not expected to go anywhere close, was drafted as he was on the dais being interviewed. And as you just said, like, it's just, I loved that energy of a teammate being surprised by his teammate. Like, it's so cool. Or what happened when Caitlin Clark, who was her Kate
Martin,
when she was picked this year, and Caitlin was so excited. Like, Leaf, I love those moments so much because it's just unexpected. So my question to you, or I guess I'll frame it as a statement. It's going to surprise everyone tonight when blank's name is called in the lottery.
I'm going to go with Bub Carrington.
Oh,
from Pittsburgh.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. I've liked him for a while because it's not often you get a freshman point guard like navigator he's also kind of like on the heliocentric star. Like, this is a term you hear in the NBA talking about, like, Luka Doncic. Oh, he dribbles all the time, but he's so good. The ball's heliocentric. It's always with him. Well, Bub Carrington commanded that respect even when they had Blake Hinson on the team, who in years prior was the star of Pittsburgh.
That's right.
And Bub Carrington didn't shoot very well, but he took on a boatload of work. And I actually just got off a podcast with a Pittsburgh I don't know exactly what it was called, but Pittsburgh oriented podcast. And I basically said, I think Bub Carrington is going to be the fourth best point guard in this class.
Behind who? Who's the other three?
Okay, this will lead me into the negative surprise.
Oh, okay. Well, then hold off on that.
Well, actually, I'll give it because the negative surprise is not going to happen. It's just what I believe.
Okay.
So I think the best point guards are as follows in some order. I don't particularly care. I think Stephon Castle, if he's qualified as a point guard, would be the number one. I think Rob Dillingham, if he's a point guard, even though he's going to score a lot, he needs to have like Victor Wembanyama, and then he's going to be an all-star. But Dillingham's not necessarily a winning player at the NBA. He can score 22 in his first 3 years of the NBA, but they might be empty calories.
That's exactly
because he's not exactly going to play defense. So you need to have a perfect team built around him. But at the worst case, you get like Lou Williams. And in this class, like you're pretty ecstatic if you get a 15-year player who can score 20 a game at some point in his career. And then the other guy is Nikola Topic. I know he's not college basketball oriented, but I just for the sake of being thorough, he's a 6'6" guard, but he happened to tear his ACL. So he might fall down the board a little bit. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what about that one guy from Kentucky who's top 5 in both boards? Reed Shepherd's not a point guard to me.
Not. We've talked about it. That's right.
So I think that Bub Carrington is a better point guard than Reed Shepherd. And I've said this on multiple podcasts. So you can clip this if you like. It's already happened. But so to me, I'll go back to the positive surprise. I think Bub Carrington is going to go in the lottery because some team's going to say, oh my goodness, like we got this 18-year-old, I guess 19 now, who's 6'4", 6'5", has a frame, shot the lights out at the combine. Even though his percentages weren't good, he was the best off the dribble shooter in the combine, 22 of 25. From three, he was among the best. And he shot poorly, but everyone shot poorly this year, and he at least has like an excuse for it. He shot difficult shots because he was asked to shoot difficult shots.
Right.
He sees the floor. He's big. He's young. I think he's going to go in the lottery, and that'll be the positive surprise in your beloved ACC.
Hey, and Leaf, I'm right with you, man. Obviously, because I'm an ACC guy, I saw a lot of Bub Carrington this past year, and I am enamored with him as a guard. I was so frustrated on Pittsburgh's behalf that they didn't make the NCAA tournament, and then consequently was frustrated on behalf of America because I wanted America to see Bub Carrington in the tournament, and they didn't get to. And so, man, I hope what you just said comes true. Now let's go to the flip side of this. If that's one of the most exciting moments, one of the saddest moments is always when the green room's emptying out and there's just like one guy sitting there waiting on his name to be called. Some of them handle it well with great poise, and others get frustrated and bang tables, or like on draft day, run out the movie Draft Day, run out of the door, and Puff Daddy or who was that was the agent in that movie. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Leaf, there are 25 green room invites. Pretty cool. 19 of them are college basketball players. I'm not going to read through the list. However, one thing I'll note is that there are 2 Colorado Buffaloes on that list. How was that team not better this year? That still frustrates me. Anyway, Leaf, in your opinion, and you can take this either, who do you think actually will be the last player in the green room, and who do you wish was the last player in the green room, or think should be, I guess I mean.
Well, I just don't think Kyle Filipowski is all that great, in my opinion. So that would be my pick of the last person in the green room. And he very well might be. Like, I've got the list in front of me, and in my mind, I can see teams looking for a lot of these players. So he along with DaRon Holmes, I'm not particularly high on. I think Johnny Furphy is going to be a really interesting case because I think there's going to be a team that really likes him because he's young and he had that 11-game stretch where he was awesome, but then he was really inconsistent. So I do think he'll go in like the top 20. But if he doesn't, some of those other teams that are drafting 20 through 30 are going to want veterans because they want players that can step in and play winning basketball right away. And so that's where he, along with some of the other younger players, might run into like a little speed bump. So my pick for you would be Kyle Filipowski. I don't want to rag on him too much, but I just don't see the upside. He's not as young as some others, so it's not like, oh well, how are you hating on productivity that he put up? But like, I know he played 2 years. It's not like it was an enormous time spent in Durham, but I just think he's kind of what he is, and you really have to find the right team to get him to like the best case scenario, which to me is best case is like Kelly Olynyk. And I think Kelly Olynyk was better at Gonzaga. Granted, I was like 12 years old when this happened, but I thought he was better at Gonzaga from my perception. I saw Kelly Olynyk up close and personal the last 2 years working for the Jazz, and I don't see Filipowski having that ability to shoot that Olynyk possesses, the ability to pass that Olynyk possesses. And Olynyk is not a good defender, but I don't think they're all that different on defense.
Do you think is Flip, and I want to be brief on this, do you think Flip's case is hurt at all by having to be the 5 at Duke this past year when he's really not?
Well, I thought about that because you're like, oh, he doesn't rim protect, but they tried to do some like switching with him, and he wasn't bad, but I don't think he was good enough to inspire faith. Like last year, he played the 4 next to Darren Lively, and he made himself look better because Lively cleaned up everything, and obviously Lively's really good. Yeah. And I mean, he was the starting center in the NBA Finals. Like he was really good. And I still didn't think Filipowski was all that great defensively then. So I don't know. I don't think it's helpful, but I don't know if it really hurt him either.
Okay, great stuff, Leaf. Love those insights. Folks, we love to hear from you. Who do you think is going to be a positive surprise? And who do you think is the last one twiddling their thumbs in the green room tonight, or maybe even into Thursday if it falls that way? Now, Leaf, we got one more segment, one more conversation to have. We're going to kind of project out who out of the non-lottery is going to have the longest NBA career? And who is your like gold stamp guaranteed multi-time all-star coming out of this draft class? We're going to talk about all that in just a second. All right, Leaf, as we look at the projections of where guys are going to fall, first round, second round, all these things, I want you to give me a player that will most likely be picked outside of the lottery tonight that's going to have the longest NBA career.
Ooh, geez, Louise, that's not an easy one.
Especially in a weaker class, right?
I'm going to go with my guy. I'm going with Baylor Shireman.
Ooh. Okay, why?
Okay, the pitch is really simple for those who love college basketball, which all of you, the listeners to this will. I've made this pitch on NBA draft shows and like, oh, but he's 23. Okay, he shoots really well. I'm just going to go in bullet points here. He shoots really well. He rebounds really well. He passes really well. He competes, and at every level, he's been asked to do different things. He was a point guard at South Dakota State who shot 46% as the primary ball handler, had assists, put his nose in there, rebound. Then he goes to Creighton, and he's asked to spot up his first year, and he adjusted. He like lowered his three-point percentage to a measly 36.5%, 37%. Then he gets on a bigger role his senior year, and he's really great. He was a third-team All-American, first-team All-Big East, in a Big East that possessed the UConn team that was dominant, that possessed Devin Carter, who won Big East Player of the Year, that possessed Tyler Kolek, who was a reigning Big East Player of the Year. All these players, and he was rightfully ahead of them, or right on par with them. And now what do you ask him to do at the NBA level? Shoot the ball well, rebound, play hard, communicate. And I watched him at the Combine, and I was already saying Baylor Shireman's awesome the entire year. I did an episode January 1st, if you guys want to check this, that he and Jalen Tyson should both be top 20 picks, and they were both ranked about 50, according to like Tankathon and most boards. And I got a lot of like, oh, why they're old. Well, I'm feeling very good about that now, but my logic was the same. Then he comes here. So I'm the Baylor Shireman guy going to the Combine, but not many people know who I am. I talked to some scouts and they're like, Baylor Shireman is the winner of the Combine. You know why? Because he knows how to play basketball.
That's right.
Like he's not an untapped project that's learning the game. He knows how to play basketball. He knows what his role is going to be. He communicated. He dominated the shell drills without being athletic. Like he was there like, oh, well, he had a 32-inch vertical. That's not very good. His shuffle drills weren't that great. But when you put him on a basketball court, he was the best player there.
Watch the tape, man. I get both football and basketball. It's like, yeah, the measurements and stuff matters, but it can't trump a player who steps on the court and is a winning basketball player, right? Like it's got to be all of that together. Leaf, I think with Shireman, something that I love is, we always wonder in the college ranks when guys transfer up, like from a South Dakota State up to a Creighton, like how's it going to go? There was a lot of conversation last year with that, with Dalton Connect coming from Northern Colorado to Tennessee. And it's like, sometimes you just know, it's like, I'm not worried about that dude at all. And Shireman, just like Connect, was one of those, and it absolutely translated up. And so for some of those same reasons, he's a phenomenal basketball player, and it's going to work at the NBA level. Is he going to be a perennial all-star? Probably not, but I think I'm with you. He's going to be a successful NBA player. All right, Leaf, one more question for you today. The clear-cut, no-brainer, write it in diamond, whatever you want to say, multi-time all-star from this draft will be?
Hopefully whoever my Utah Jazz take. No, I hope so, but I don't see a clear-cut star. But if I were to choose one, I think I've convinced myself into believing in Stephon Castle to be the most likely to have star upside. And my reasoning is essentially what I feared about him emulating Andre Jackson's role. Like it was, well, everyone says he was held back by UConn. He wasn't playing the point guard. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, maybe he has more of what he can do, but maybe he also has the perfect role. And then you don't know what you're getting the next level. I've decided that the first one's more true than the second. And I have a friend who really loves basketball, and we're doing a kind of a goofy podcast where we just talk about basketball together, and it's fun. And he's been telling me, just chirping in my ear nonstop, about how Stephon Castle's trajectory is similar to that of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's not saying they're the same player. Wow. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played on the Kentucky team and was good, but he wasn't this this unbelievable 30-point scorer he is in the NBA. His first couple of years in the NBA, he was good. He was defensively oriented. Was a crafty player. And then he's developed his game not on necessarily dominant strength, dominant speed, but more on guile and strength, or in his case, guile and handle. And Castle, I think it'll be some strength and some craftiness. And defensively, I think right away he's good. I think rebounding the ball, he's right away good. Like I've heard people say at the minimum, he's Josh Hart, which I think is still actually a really good player. Yeah. But then you add scoring and point guard ability. I think there's a chance in which he pans out to being an all-star. I don't want to say I'm 100% confident. Like I had a couple that I was 100% confident in the last few years. For instance, Brandon Miller, I before last season, but before last college basketball season, I said he was the best freshman, and I wasn't even close. I never even blinked. And then I thought to myself, well, the issue with Brandon Miller is I don't think he's a Paul George. He's more of a Danny Granger. But if I'm thinking about an all-star compared to a superstar or close to superstar, that means you're already in that upper echelon. I don't quite feel that way about Stephon Castle that I felt about Brandon Miller, but I think he's the guy. If anyone from the college basketball ranks turns into a star, he's the one.
And what I like about that, Leaf, and the way you laid it out in particular, is there's enough stuff that are important to NBA teams that he already does well, like that defense and rebounding that you were talking about, that buys him some time for that offensive skill set to continue to grow well enough to where he's still going to find a spot and a role to allow that offense to catch up. And so I'm with you. I'm really intrigued to see Stephon Castle's trajectory. Where do you think he goes tonight, by the way?
My assumption is he'll be gone by pick 4.
Okay.
I don't know if it's necessarily pick 4. That would be my, like, if I was placing betting odds of like, okay, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
In a range.
4.
Yeah.
But I think it will be 1 through 4.
Okay. Love to see it. All right, gang. Happy draft day to all of you. Can't wait to watch it tonight. Again, it's only first round tonight, Wednesday. Second round will be Thursday. Big thanks to Leaf for joining us in the midst of a crazy season in his life. Also, he's got a big tennis match later today, so we're going to see how that goes. Leaf, good luck, buddy. Proud of you, and we know you're going to knock it out. Folks, if you haven't...
I just might get heat stroke. That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
Dude, chug water right now while I get us out of here. All right, folks, subscribe to the show on audio and video if you've not done so already. If you're not part of the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to have you in there. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.